For more than 70 years, the U.S.-Japan alliance has served as a cornerstone of peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. This enduring partnership has not only shaped the destinies of both nations, but has also influenced the broader trajectory of Asia and the world. Born from the devastation and trauma of World War II, the alliance began as a bold experiment in reconciliation. Two former adversaries, once locked in bitter conflict, became close allies. The United States guaranteed Japan's security while Japan agreed to host American forces on its soil, creating a foundation for mutual trust and cooperation that would last for generations. This partnership was instrumental in enabling Japan's post-war economic miracle. With security assured, Japan focused on rebuilding, transforming itself into a global economic powerhouse and a model of democracy. During the Cold War, Japan became a vital U.S. partner, providing strategic support and serving as a bulwark against communist expansion in Asia. The alliance fostered regional stability, deterring aggression, and creating an environment where Asian economies could flourish. As trade and investment grew, the benefits of peace extended far beyond Japan's borders, helping to lift millions out of poverty across the region. Of course, the alliance has faced its share of challenges: trade disputes, policy disagreements, and shifting global dynamics have tested the relationship. Yet time and again, the U.S. and Japan have found common ground, united by shared interests containing Soviet expansion, managing China's rise, and countering threats from North Korea. Today, however, that hard-won stability is under new and serious threat. The world is watching as old certainties are called into question. A new, more aggressive American trade policy is beginning to erode the trust and goodwill that have long defined the partnership. Tariffs, protectionist measures, and public disagreements are straining the alliance in ways not seen in decades. The core principles of mutual respect and shared benefit, once the bedrock of the alliance, are now being openly questioned by both sides. Uncertainty is growing, and the future of the partnership is no longer assured. Now, policymakers and leaders across Asia are asking a difficult question: can this cornerstone of regional security survive a trade war? Or will the alliance that shaped the modern Indo-Pacific begin to unravel under the weight of new tensions? The crisis began with a dramatic and unexpected shift in U.S. policy, an assertive embrace of America First, a doctrine that prioritized domestic interests above all else, even at the expense of long-standing alliances. This marked a turning point, signaling to the world that the United States was willing to disrupt established relationships in pursuit of its own economic goals. Japan, a nation that had been a loyal and dependable partner for decades, was blindsided when the U.S. suddenly imposed steep tariffs on Japanese steel and aluminum. The shock deepened as Washington threatened a crippling 25% tariff on Japanese automobiles, a move that sent tremors through Japan's economy and diplomatic circles. The automotive industry, the very heart of Japan's economic engine, now faced an existential risk. Factories that had powered Japan's post-war recovery and global reputation were suddenly under threat, with thousands of jobs and billions in exports hanging in the balance. Decades of loyalty and cooperation seemed to count for little. Trust between the two nations began to dissolve, replaced by anxiety and suspicion. The sense of partnership that had defined U.S.-Japan relations was now in jeopardy. Prime Minister Kishida's efforts to maintain strong ties with Washington were publicly rebuked as American officials doubled down on their demands. The Japanese government found itself in a delicate position trying to balance national pride with the need for diplomatic pragmatism. Japanese companies like Toyota and Honda, which had invested heavily in American factories and communities, now face deep uncertainty. Their future in the U.S. market was suddenly unclear, and executives worried about the impact on their workers and global competitiveness. Business leaders voiced growing concern, urging the government to take action. At the same time, officials were forced to defend Japan's economic interests without jeopardizing the vital security alliance that underpinned the region's stability. The Japanese public, once confident in America's reliability as an ally, now saw the U.S. as an unpredictable and potentially unreliable partner. Public opinion shifted, with many questioning whether Japan could continue to depend on the United States. The shock waves from the tariffs rippled through Japanese politics and business. Lawmakers debated how best to respond, while markets reacted with volatility, reflecting the uncertainty that now gripped the nation. Japan now faced a profound dilemma. Should it respond forcefully to defend its interests, risking irreparable damage to its essential alliance with the U.S., or seek compromise and risk appearing weak? The stakes had never been higher, and the world watched as Japan weighed its next move. U.S.-Japan trade disputes aren't new, but this one is fundamentally different and more dangerous. In the past, Cold War imperatives kept the alliance strong and trade fights were managed through compromise. Now, the America First approach is unilateral, using national security as a pretext for protectionism. By labeling Japanese autos a security threat, the U.S. has weaponized the very concept that once bound the alliance. The world is now multipolar. China offers Japan new strategic options and leverage. The rhetoric from Washington is harsher, eroding mutual respect and shared identity. For the first time, Japanese citizens are told their primary industry threatens their closest ally. This isn't just economic, it's psychological, planting seeds of doubt about the alliance's future. Japan is reconsidering its post-war assumptions. The symbolic damage may be lasting. The alliance's foundation is at risk. The threatened tariffs would devastate Japan's auto sector, risking millions of jobs and billions in profits. The chilling effect is already halting investments and shaking confidence. Beyond economics, the accusation that Japanese cars threaten U.S. security is a deep insult, undermining decades of cooperation. Pro-American consensus in Japanese politics is weakening. Japan is rethinking its economic ties, including its massive holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds. Quiet discussions about diversifying away from U.S. assets are underway. The crisis is forcing Japan to question its reliance on the U.S. for security in exchange for economic freedom. National debate is intensifying. Should Japan pursue a more independent foreign policy and military? Once fringe questions are now mainstream, the old model is fading. Japan must adapt to survive. Tokyo's response to the mounting economic pressure is multi-pronged, reflecting both its resilience and strategic foresight. As the world watches, Japan is carefully crafting a plan that balances assertiveness with caution, determined not to be cornered by external forces. Diplomacy comes first. Prime Minister Kishida and his team are front and center in Washington, engaging in high-stakes talks. They emphasize Japan's vital investments in the U.S. economy and its indispensable role in regional security, reminding American officials of the deep ties that bind the two nations. Yet these discussions are anything but easy. Japanese diplomats walk a fine line, voicing firm opposition to the new tariffs, but always careful not to provoke further escalation or damage the broader alliance. Every word is measured, every gesture calculated. At the same time, Japan is not standing still. It's diversifying its economic partnerships, strengthening trade pacts like the CPTP, finalizing ambitious deals with the European Union, and actively seeking new partners across Asia and beyond. This proactive approach signals that Japan is not dependent on any single market. The message is clear. Japan has options and Washington can't dictate terms unilaterally. By expanding its network, Tokyo is building resilience against future shocks. On the global stage, Japan has filed a formal complaint with the World Trade Organization, positioning itself as a staunch defender of international rules. By rallying other nations against U.S. protectionism, Japan is working to build a coalition in support of free and fair trade. Behind the scenes, Japan is quietly reassessing its financial leverage as one of